Hello and welcome to Game Theory. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. Today, we're going to break down Jaylen Johnson from the Atlanta Hawks. Johnson is, in my opinion, one of, if not the most improved player I have seen across the NBA so far. He's averaging 14 and a half points, 7 rebounds. He's shooting 65% from the field, 40% from three over the course of these first 2 weeks, week and a half, whatever you want to call it. And he's also been very, very impressive defensively, in my opinion. He's been flying around. You watch him on the back line. We'll go through some clips here. He's communicating, he's talking, he's always tagging, he's always available. I thought in the game against Minnesota, I thought he was really quite effective in their fourth game as well, dealing with bigger guys in Naz Reid and Karl Anthony Towns, at least as effective as anybody could be in the first half for the Hawks in that game when they gave up. I think it was like over 80 points. Having said that, Jaylen Johnson, I thought, was a good person to break down because I've just really, really liked what I've seen. So we're going to dive into clips from the Atlanta Hawks opener against the Charlotte Hornets, where Johnson went for 21 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists. He went 9 for 13 from the field. You're going to see a guy that is dynamic in transition. You're going to see a good defensive player that is really trying to make an impact, even if there are still some flaws there that we'll talk about. I've been really, really impressed with Jaylen Johnson at this point and want to dive into him. So with that being said, let's dive into the tape. Johnson, for the first 3 games of the year, came off the bench for the Atlanta Hawks. He actually started the last game against the Timberwolves. I do wonder if some of that had to do with the matchup where they play as big as they do with Karl Towns and Rudy Gobert. I will be interested to see if that sticks in terms of him starting long-term. I think personally it's quite earned, and I've really liked what I've seen. We will see if Quinn Snyder agrees with that, though. But let's start here. He came in around the 5-minute mark of this game. Let's jump into the 4-minute mark here in the first, and you're going to get to see just some of the defensive ability that Jaylen Johnson has. So automatically here, they're going to try and run him through just this quick little dribble handoff. He ends up getting through it real quick. Now watch him. He's early on this tag, which is great. Realizes that he is guarding. I believe that's going to be JT Thor in the corner. If JT Thor shoots, I think that's a situation the Hawks are very comfortable with. So watch this empty side ball screen. I put this here as the first clip for a reason. It was probably the thing that the Hornets ran most and most effectively throughout the course of this game that the Hornets ended up winning. I really, really love their empty ball screen actions, but I like it in part because Atlanta never adjusted. I thought that Atlanta's defensive structure in this game was quite bad. I don't blame that, though, on this guy. I think that he did everything that he was tasked to do, with a few exceptions that we'll dive into. But I thought that Jaylen Johnson was quite good defensively, and this is a big piece of it, right? So as you're going to see here, this is just a quick little screen here, and then Mark Williams is going to roll. And Jaylen Johnson is on defense here. Jaylen Johnson needs to be able to step over here and make sure he's tagging Mark Williams, right? He has to make sure he's available because otherwise Mark Williams is just going to dunk. There's so much space here. We talk about these empty side actions a lot. We talked about it a lot in the Tyrese Maxey video as well, right? Really, really hard to stop. So here, I love how he makes it just a little bit muddy, right? This is a hard pass for, I think that's Brandon Miller to make. He has to get over the top of this guy. You can see that Jaylen's already trying to get back out to JT Thor, but he's there already. His momentum is going backward, though, out to Thor in case that kick out comes. And then you have Capella recovering already. Just that little presence, that little tag is going to muddy it a little bit and make it so Brandon Miller can't make that easy pass. Now you're going to see Miller try and cross over. It's going to result in a Terry Rozier 3. And then another thing that Johnson has done really well is just rebound in a contested manner on the glass. I really love what he does here. Goes up, gets this ball over a long defender, uses his great hand-eye coordination. That's one thing that Jaylen Johnson has always had, going back to Duke, going back to playing high school in Milwaukee. He has always had really, really good hands and really good hand-eye coordination, really good feel for just where the ball is going to come off the rim, good feel for the game in general. We'll talk about that with some of his live dribble passing as well. Uh, just a really solid overall first defensive set, but I put it first because I wanted to talk a little bit about the empty side actions to start. That was a well defended one. And I think what you will see, we will talk about how the Hornets adjust. Maybe we'll go with that as we see more of them. So, next clip here again, 116 left in the first. And this is just a nightmare fuel pass from PJ Washington directly to Bogdan Bogdanovic. But I love how Jaylen Johnson's just going to beat PJ Washington down the court. He's going to go up and dunk it. I think Jaylen Johnson has been one of the more effective transition players I have seen so far this season. There's not really much to draw on this. I mean, you're going to see here, nice little Euro step. He's going to try and draw Nick Richards in a little bit by slowing down and being patient. It's going to suck Richards in a little bit here. And then you're going to see Jaylen Johnson fly. I think Jaylen Johnson's athleticism is quite underrated league wide. He has that great blend of speed, power, just ability to cover ground in a real way at 6'9". This has always been the enticing package. Jaylen Johnson was one of the 5 highest ranked recruits in his recruiting class for a reason. And he had a season at Duke that was eminently forgettable, in part due to COVID. He was part of that COVID class, unfortunately, in 2021, but also he just didn't play well. And I think it's worth acknowledging that as well. College isn't for everybody. Let's dive into this next. I think it's literally the next defensive possession down the court. And he just plays that gap perfectly. Trae Young throws it off the backboard for reasons. We'll go with reasons, I think is the fairest way to say that. So what is this action here? So as you can see, this is a Ram pick and roll here. So the Hornets are going to have Nick Richards come down and screen Jaylen Johnson here so that PJ Washington can come around and set a ball screen here on Trae Young. The idea here is you're going to try and either get a switch or you're going to try and get some separation. So it's a little bit harder for Jaylen Johnson to get into proper position in drop, playing at the level, whatever they want to do. So screen gets set. And I love Johnson's positioning here. He plays it almost as a drop. You're going to see throughout the course of this game, there aren't many circumstances where the Hawks dropped in pick and roll coverage, but I love his positioning here. He is directly in front of Trae Young, or directly in front of LaMelo Ball. I'm sorry. So that driving lane is cut off unless he tries to go through Bogdan Bogdanovic and Onyeka Okongwu. And he's also in a great spot here to try and disrupt this pocket pass, which is ultimately what he ends up doing based on having seen this clip already, right? He ends up getting a hand on the pocket pass, tosses it up to Trae Young. Trae should have just laid that up, but hey, Trae Young is Trae Young for a reason. I love it. Throws it off the backboard. Easy dunk, gets the people going. Jaylen Johnson, 4 points now. Can't remember. He might have scored in another bucket that I did not put on the clips. So this one here, another defensive clip. Why did I put this on here? So this is just a side ball screen. And I love how active and available Jaylen Johnson continues to be in help side defense, right? All of these clips so far have basically been defensive clips. I think Jaylen Johnson's been quite good defensively so far this season and deserves credit for it. He is directly in front of LaMelo Ball here. You've got AJ Griffin, who is ready and waiting in help here. I don't know why LaMelo didn't shoot this ball out to Teo Maladon after he gets the angle here, but he chooses to go up for a wild layup. You're going to have to live with some of this. I mean, look at his takeoff point. Jesus Christ. Like, what what are we doing here? He took off from the elbow and is going to try and lay this up with a finger roll. Look, you're going to have to deal with some of this stuff with LaMelo if you're going to have LaMelo on your team. Uh, Johnson gets the nice side contest here. Makes it so that LaMelo can't go up with the floater. It's going to be a very, very difficult shot. Has to readjust in midair. Throws up a wild finger roll from very far away. And we're out on the break again with AJ Johnson and another transition opportunity for Johnson. That's a foul. He ends up going to the foul line, making some free throws. Next up here, again, Jaylen Johnson, this time in the strong side, going to become the weak side corner now. And this is a fun little action, right? I love what they do here. They try and get PJ on this little back cut going toward the basket. The Hawks communicate through it. It's a great screen by LaMelo. If I'm going to call out the takeoff point being from the elbow, I'm going to call out a great screen here. Trey, I think that honestly, Brandon Miller should just be throwing this ball up if he can get just a little bit of separation from Sadiq Bey, throw this ball up high and get it to PJ Washington. That seems like a reasonable request. They recover back. Look at this. You see here Bogdan Bogdanovic communicating to Jaylen Johnson a switch, right? He's going to stay here. Jaylen Johnson's going to be out there onto Maladon, if I remember correctly. Yep. And now you've got another help situation. He's the low man. He's rotating over. He's protecting the rim. I love this. Look at him. He's constantly awaiting. He's available. This turns into just essentially like a little ghost action here from Brandon Miller to the corner, and then a side ball screen to try and get LaMelo into the middle of the court. And I love that, again, you're going to see here Jaylen Johnson just going to rotate in. He's rotating in. He's making life hard for LaMelo Ball. And then he's going to get the rebound and he's starting the break the other way. That's a huge advantage of having Jaylen Johnson. You have a guy that is 6'9" who can be active and aggressive on the weak side of the basket, protecting the rim. He can grab rebounds. And then when he grabs rebounds, he's pushing it the other way with real speed and ability to cover the ground. That is an enormous, enormous benefit to Jaylen Johnson's game. Next up here. This one I put on here because, again, I don't think Jaylen Johnson did anything wrong here. This is just scheme to me, driving me crazy. The Atlanta Hawks, this is another, like, by the way, Ram pick and roll action, right? Where you're seeing, you can kind of see it off the screen where Nick Richards is coming up, setting a screen onto Johnson. We're going to get a ball screen action up here. And then just a short roll from PJ as LaMelo goes around. That time he actually got a little bit more, but what is the difference this time as compared to the last Ram ball screen clip that we watched? They're at the level. Jaylen Johnson's feet are here. He's basically at the level. He's at touching distance from LaMelo. This is where the pocket pass comes in, right? Now PJ Washington has a real advantage. I am not totally sure why Atlanta chose to play screens at the level in this game. It does not really make sense to me. You have guys like Onyeka Okongwu, not an elite drop defender, but good enough. And you have Clint Capella, who was doing a lot of showing at the level. And Clint is a real drop defender. So I don't totally get it. as you will see in the second half, they kind of got hit. They started to get hit with it now. None of that was Jaylen Johnson's fault. I just kind of put it in to give context on the defensive scheme that the Hawks were running throughout the course of this game. This one here is a bit of a tough one, though. This one, Jaylen just gets caught behind a little bit. Again, I will give LaMelo Ball credit. He made life really hard as a screener in this game for guys to get around. I think this is one that you just switch personally. They don't seem to want to do that all that often in this game. I get why. Maybe you don't switch that. That's Trey. I thought that wasn't Trey. I thought that was Bogdanovich. No, you don't switch that. That's the right choice. Johnson just gets caught behind though, and it's just hard when Trey's out there because he's not going to be able to provide a ton of help in those circumstances. You can't really peel switch it. So if that's going to happen, you really have to be on it. You have to be able to get around those screens and lock and trail at a high level. Again, this isn't horrendous by Jaylen Johnson, but it's LaMelo doing a really good job here. I think LaMelo deserves a lot of credit for his screening in this game. He did quite well. Dunk. Next up, I think we might get into some jump shots now from Jaylen Johnson. So this is just a high ball screen turning into a spot up from Jaylen. He's going to knock down this three. Later on, I'll show you a clip of what Jaylen Johnson's shooting form looked like at Duke. He has made some real strides with this thing over the course of his time in Atlanta. Kind of a quick little pick and pop, then a second screen there from Onyeka. It's still, as you can see there with a little hesitation, the catch and shoot is still not quite his preferred method, right? But look at the base. I just want to point out the base, quite strong, feet shoulder width apart, everything underneath them. Everything looks quite smooth now. Again, we'll see a clip from it Duke here momentarily. Uh, really has improved a lot as a shooter. I don't think he's a 40% three-point shooter yet, but he might be around 35. And if he can knock down a spot three, that completely changes the trajectory of his game and his ability. Next up here, Johnson started that possession in the weak side corner, now is in the strong side corner here. He's going to go. He's going to get this rebound, and he is just going to run, and he is going to push it down the Hornets' throat on defense. So here, and just look at this. Look at his vision. He's looking up. He's trying to find someone available. He's trying to find different ways to attack the defense here. He has like a bit of a tendency to go no look, which is fun. His eyes are looking this way. And that ball is going cross corner to Trey Young. And that is a outstanding pass. I think Johnson was really unlucky to only end up with 2 assists in this game. Obviously, he doesn't get one there because it ends up being a foul. I thought Johnson had some absolutely outstanding passes worth noting in this game. Again, you're going to see Johnson taking a shot there. This one misses. Why did I grab this one? Because I think you get just a bit of a chance. It was almost like off of a flare action, but not really. He has a bit of a pause still at the top of his shot, right? You can see it. There's just like a very slight hitch that's still getting worked through. But truly, and this is where we're going to get into the Duke stuff. Look at the base again. I want to point out the base is a little bit wider there, but still mostly shoulder distance apart, right? Good base underneath him. You feel like this ball is probably going to go at some point with some reasonable efficiency. Here, you're going to see him step out into the spot up. This is him in 2020 to 2021, like December 2020, you know, January 2021, something like that. It just is not nearly as rhythmic in terms of the shot. There's so much less legs involved in this shot, right? You can see that. Look at his feet placement, right? Like that left leg is like flaring out kind of. He doesn't have it underneath his base in general. Like you can see like this whole like bend that's happening here is not ideal. It's kind of resulting in funky stuff going on up here as well. It's just not as rhythmic a shot. He's made real strides over the course of his career in Atlanta doing this. But also to go back to that last one here, look at how straight up and down he is. Look at the balance. The balance is just so much better on the shot now. He has a chance. He has a real chance to actually make them, I think, at this point, which is valuable. Okay, and we'll go through these one more time. You can kind of see what I'm talking about. All right, let's go through here again. Still in the second quarter. And again, Jaylen Johnson just going to get a chance to go. Just look at how quickly he covers ground, right? This is such a hard guard. This is such a hard guard. A lot of the time, guards are the ones that are back in transition. It's changing a little bit with how much uh, bigs shoot on the perimeter now and are perimeter oriented, but still, a lot of the time, it's going to be guards. You have two guys here coming down. One of them just is able to cover ground so quickly and fill those lanes so fast that there's just not much that Terry Rozier can do. I just don't think he's big enough. Next up here, we're into the third quarter now. Johnson's going to grab the ball. And then again, we're just pushing, right? We're going to go as fast as we can. And that is absolutely sick. That is absolutely sick stuff. So, what are we looking at here? As he comes down the court, you can see that his eyes are up. You can see he's looking over this way already, is what makes this so fun. He is hoping that Brandon Miller does not shoot out that way because he knows he's going to have this pass if he doesn't. Instead, Miller comes here and does not impact the play in any way, shape, or form. And this is such an insanely hard pass for a guy who is 6'9". This is a left hand, so offhand wrap around at the basket, going at full speed off of a live dribble to the cross corner. Guys that are 6'9" don't do this. Like truly, guys that are 6'9" do not make this pass all that often. This is absolutely sick. He has always been known as somebody who can really pass the ball and be effective in that way. It's starting to really translate in transition at this point. That's the best place. We're just going to watch this one more time. It's probably my favorite clip of the whole thing. I know that he doesn't get anything for it because Bogdanovich misses the shot, but my God, that is a sick pass from Jaylen Johnson. Next up here, we're at 1:30 left in the third. And now look at him just bully his way to the rim, right? He's essentially being the second side creator here off of the initial action. It's a pretty simple action. This is just high ball screen, right? You've got one in the wing, one in the corner, one in the opposite corner. As soon as he sees Trey is going to take the ball screen this way, Jaylen is going to lift to the wing because it becomes harder for this man here to be able to tag the roller if that's going to be the case. So Johnson lifts to the wing. He gets the outlet. It's a pretty good closeout from JT Thor, but you see that little off arm, right? Gets him with this jab step, by the way. Shout out the jab step. He's going to push Thor just a little bit that way, right? Just a very small amount that way. You can see that right foot come off the ground here. And that's when Jaylen knows that he's got him, right? At that point, it's just going to be really hard for JT Thor to do much against Johnson. You have to be exceptionally strong through your chest to be able to stop this dude. I mean, he just goes in like a bull in a china shop and just shoves JT Thor through the rim. That is terrific. If you're not going to get called for it, keep doing it. Next up here, you get to see some of Johnson's switchability, right? I personally think this is Teo Maladone, like kind of grifting for a foul. He got the call. Good for him. I don't really think this is a foul on Jaylen Johnson personally, but you can see him. He's constantly active. He's aware. He's looking at LaMelo without ball watching, though. Like there's a difference. He's aware of what is on the backside. He knows that he's got two that he might end up responsible for if Onyeka has to tag here, right? So he's out. He closes out well. Look at that. That's just about perfect closeout technique, right? On balance. He's ready to contain a drive and then also contest. And then side ball screen here coming around from Maladone. They just switch it, right? And now we're just cutting off. I would love to see his chest be able to stay in front of Maladone there. I think he has the ability to do that. I think his feet are good enough to do that. But that's just a tough call, I think. And you can tell he's mad, claps afterward, disappointed. Uh, I think that's Maladone's going to try and shove his way into Jaylen Johnson there. He literally pushes his way in, then bounces off of him. Yeah, what can you do? Next up, this is just a cut to the rim on an out of bounds play where I think he is essentially the clear, like he's clearing here. He's not even really like he's an option as like a last resort or if he pops open immediately. But this play here is we're going to try and set a screen to get Johnson to pop open immediately. Johnson's going to run to the basket there. Honestly, he has leverage here, sort of, but Brandon Miller here is making this just a little bit cloudy, I think, for Trae Young. Love to see a play where maybe AJ Griffin is spacing to the corner instead of there, but I digress. Right? I don't know why you're running two guys to the rim here in this way. Uh, if you're going to use Bogdanovich in this action like this, where you want him screening and you want Griffin clearing out, I would prefer to see Griffin clear to the corner. That's just my opinion. Creates better spacing on the court, gives you a better chance to hit Johnson here coming to the rim, and you would prefer to hit Johnson because he's bigger and a better finisher than AJ Griffin is. But nonetheless, the play here is kind of a screen the screener set where Bogdanovich sets this screen, and then you're going to see him come around and try to loop and get an open three. They guard it well. I will give LaMelo credit. I think he actually had like pretty real attention to detail defensively in this game. And in terms of screening and playing off the ball, it was his on ball decision making that I didn't love. But that becomes cloudy there because of LaMelo. So now you just have to hit the outlet, which the best outlet here is Jaylen Johnson. He's just right at the rim. He has leverage on PJ Washington and finishes over the top. Next up, We're going to get Johnson in a screen action here and just throws this beautifully weighted touch pass. Again, Johnson is a fantastic passer, I think. He is really, really good as a passer and playmaker. That essentially turns into a DHO keeper here for Onyeka. Trae Young has come around. Onyeka keeps it, decides to throw the ball to Johnson. Johnson's going to come around the screen. Onyeka is going to roll to the rim here. And man, that is not an easy pass. Like that is in no way, shape, or form an easy pass. He has to get this perfectly weighted in between two guys here, right? He has to get this over the top of Nick Richards, who's in this angle. And he has to make sure to get high enough to where PJ Washington can't deflect it, right? So look at that. That's perfect right over the top of Nick Richards. That's a big dude with a 7'4" wingspan. And it's just perfectly weighted to a Kongwu right there. Look at that. That is absolutely beautiful by Jaylen Johnson. Absolutely beautiful. Next up here, Johnson's going to get it. And then we're just attacking PJ Washington, right? Leaves it a little bit short, but I like the aggressiveness, right? I think that in general, Jaylen can be a little bit stiff when he's trying to shake guys off the bounce right now. I don't see a ton of like shimmy, a ton of wiggle. You're going to see here, he's going to try and go between the legs, and then it's just straight line. When Jaylen Johnson can get downhill, and there will be another clip later where he's going to get downhill, when he can get downhill and can just beat guys to spots because he's so fast and has such long strides and is powerful, that's where he succeeds. This is the stuff where PJ Washington can just get his chest in front of him, right? Like he's just going to be able to stay in front of him, use his chest, and contest, right? A little too easy. This next one here, Johnson's going to get this, and then he's just going to rip and go, right? So what is this play? This is Trae bringing the ball up the court. He's going to catch a screen here from Jaylen Johnson. Trae's going to run around for a potential dribble handoff. But what Onyeka realizes smartly here is all of this space here for a straight line drive because Onyeka Okongwu is the center in this alignment, right? So again, you're going to see when Jaylen Johnson can just beat guys to the spot and he can just out leverage guys and get to his angles, you open up a driving lane for him and he can just rip through and go straight downhill to the rim. Yeah, he can do that at a really high level. That's why the shooting is important. If he can shoot, that then is going to open up even more opportunities for that because guys like JT Thor are going to have to come out even higher on him as a player. The shooting is the swing skill. If Jaylen Johnson's a shooter, man, his upside is very, very high. But even without the legit, like confident, extremely high level shooting, so far this season, he has not taken more than 3 threes in a game. Even without that, he's still very, very valuable because of the defense. This next one here is a bit frustrating if I remember. No, this isn't the one I think it is, although it is a little bit frustrating. So why is Jaylen Johnson's closeout so rough here? It's going to result in a foul. Nick Richards makes some free throws, everything like that, right? So this is what I'm talking about when I say I do not understand why the Hawks played so high at the level. They put in an inordinate amount of stress on Jaylen Johnson, and at a certain point, because the Atlanta Hawks were using Trae Young to guard Terry Rozier here. Eventually, the Hornets, you're going to see, are going to move Rozier into that low man role and force all sorts of difficulties in terms of help. So this to me is all scheme based. I just do not like in any way, shape, or form what they were doing. I truly do not understand why you need to put 2 on the ball against Gordon Hayward. All due respect to Gordon Hayward, who's had a really good career, but if DeAndre Hunter can't recover in front of Gordon Hayward in a drop, I mean, what are we doing here? This is eventually going to get out to Terry Rozier, and then it's going to get down to JT Thor. But because you're putting 2 on the ball, this low man here, who is Jaylen Johnson in this case, has to be in the middle of the paint here. Because if Nick Richards rolls, he has to be very available as the last line of rim protection. Nick Richards rolls here. If you notice, Gordon Hayward waits for him to roll before passing. And then we're into reversal, right? We're into Terry Rozier, who sees a wide open JT Thor in the corner. And this is just a lot of ground to cover. This is just a lot of ground to cover for Jaylen Johnson. I think he covers it. You'd love to see him maybe be like a touch more under control, but it's hard to be under control when you have to get up to that speed to get out to the shot. That's why that play ends up being a foul. Not really Jaylen Johnson. It's a little bit Jaylen Johnson's fault. You'd like to see him close out just slightly more under control, and I think he'll do that as he continues to grow and mature. But to me, that was a scheme-based issue more than a Jaylen Johnson-based issue. Next up, great contested rebound again. And now we're going, right? And we're throwing a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful pass there. I believe that ended up being a foul. Sweet little underhand scoop pass, right? So, look at who he is rebounding against. Look at who he is working under. Nick Richards is 7 foot tall with a 7'4" wingspan. He's probably 250 pounds. And Jaylen Johnson is strong enough to work him underneath the rim. He's not moving him necessarily, but he's working him underneath the rim just enough. He's keeping him there, keeping him locked in, and he's able to grab it. And as soon as he grabs that ball, we're pushing, right? We're going, because that's what Jaylen Johnson does. So Johnson, again, he's just always looking. He's always trying to find who is going to be available. I think he picks the right time here to make this pass. Should be an open pass. It ends up being a foul, if I remember correctly. Maybe not. Might not be a foul here. No, that's just the ref raising his hand for the 3-point sign. But that's a great play by Jaylen Johnson. Gave his team an open 3-point opportunity. Not his fault if they don't convert at that point. Can't make the shots for them. This one here. This is a fun defensive possession. It results in Brandon Miller back cutting. But again, yes, Jaylen Johnson is responsible for that guy. And yes, he needs to be aware of what's going on behind him. But to me, again, this is a scheme-based issue. So what are we running here with the Hawks? We are running a quick little action to get Gordon Hayward the ball on the side. We're going to see PJ Washington go that way. Jaylen Johnson will follow. Then this becomes, as I noted earlier, empty side ball screen time. Because this is empty side ball screens, and they have 3 guys, 1, 2, 3, on the weak side of the action, and because this man is going to roll to the rim, one of these 2 guys has to be responsible for tagging the roller here. And one of them is going to be responsible potentially for a 1-on-2. So the question is, do you want Jaylen Johnson to be responsible for the 1-on-2 where he can cover more ground, or do you want him to be responsible for the man at the rim? The way that they seem to communicate this is Jaylen points and says, Bogdan, you take the role here. Bogdan takes the role. They hit the short roll, which means you are in a circumstance where you're in a 1-on-2 on the backside. Because if it's same side here with this kick out, DeJounte has to fly to him. So what happens? Because he's responsible for both of these guys, yes, DeJounte probably needs to be a little bit lower here. Realistically, maybe like in this area, I would say. I'd say Jaylen Johnson needs to be right here or so. Because if this ball goes here to here, quick touch, he's probably got enough time to close out. If this ball just goes here somehow, because it's Mark Williams and he passes over the top of DeJounte. If you're standing here, DeJounte can close out. Let's say the ball bounces up there. You're hoping by that point that your big has had time to recover. And then Bogdan can shoot out there. We can't have happen is what Jaylen Johnson has happen, where Brandon Miller catches him napping a little bit and back cuts him, right? This is hard. This is really, really difficult. This is really difficult stuff for a third-year defensive player who is 21 years old. And he's really good defensively. I want to make that very clear that I think Jaylen Johnson is good defensively. But to me, this whole thing is set up by why are we playing at the level here of this? Why are we so high making, instead of Bogdan Bogdanovic, maybe come here on the tag because you have Capella maybe down here in like a typical ice situation? Why are we so high? That's the original sin of this play, in my opinion. Why are we playing so high at the level with Clint Capella against Gordon Hayward? Gordon Hayward's like a fine pull-up shooter. He's not a guy that like you're worried about being lethal as a pull-up shooter. But because you're playing at the level, you force all of this immense stress on the backside of your defense here. And if it's Stephen Curry, that's one thing. You have to play Steph at the level or else that ball's going up, right? But against Hayward, I'm a little bit less inclined to say that that was the right call. Yes, Jaylen Johnson needs to look back here, needs to be aware of what's happening with Brandon Miller. Also, I hate the scheme, and I think they really need to figure something out here because the first half against Minnesota was also quite poor as their fourth game. This one here, another empty side ball screen. Going to throw this one to Capella at the elbow. Now we're going to get a middle ball screen. Now Johnson is dancing against PJ. Look at PJ. Look at how he loads up with that shoulder to go into PJ Washington, right? It's a quick little move on this crossover to try and get PJ in a tough spot. It ends up being the PJ is going to have to open his hips up a little bit here and allow that driving angle. Again, I think PJ does a pretty good job here, but Jaylen gets that little bit of separation by lowering that shoulder into Washington's chest, forcing him backward just a little bit. When you're that big, You're 6'9". You don't need that much space. You can get away with getting from here to here in space. That's what, 8 feet to 11 feet probably of separation. So 3 feet of separation. This one he makes. It's a tough shot from Johnson. I think that the Hornets will probably be okay with that shot. This next one here, Capella rolls into the open area. Jaylen Johnson just misses a three. That one felt a little bit like his legs were not in it, kind of similarly to the college shot for different reasons. Let's just call out what this play is. Again, very simple high ball screen action. You know, two on one side, one on the other, rolling into the middle of the court here. It's going to bounce in, bounce out to the wing, bounce into Capella. Trying to see if they were playing zone here. And if that's why they did this. I don't think they are. I think they're just playing very high at the level against Trey. Again, compared to the college mechanics, left leg directly underneath shoulder, which is great. I colored too much. Directly underneath shoulder, which is great. Balance is great here. Just left it short. Played a lot of minutes in this game. Maybe just didn't quite have the legs. Maybe just missed it. But those mechanics are much better and workable for Johnson. Next one here. Again, no, this is a different one. This is not a side ball screen, but it's the same premise here where why in the world is Clint Capella above the 3-point line against Gordon Hayward? Because now you give Mark Williams all of this space. This is why teams play drop, because it negates this amount of space and your space is actually more up here. So again, what's happening here is you can see that Jaylen sees this early and calls it out. He and Trey are talking here. How do we want to handle this? Because the Hornets did a great job in this game, coaching wise. I think they kind of coached themselves to a win here, to be honest, given how Atlanta was playing defensively. But they put Terry Rozier, who you can't see on the screen yet, in the corner, which puts an immense amount of pressure on Trae Young, who is the smallest guy on the court and is being asked to be the low man and potentially the rim protector on a rolling Mark Williams. So the way that they communicate this is, again, we have the low man B. This is normally the way you defend it. This is not abnormal from Atlanta. The low man ends up being the player tagging Mark Williams. But we end up getting I don't even know if I want to call this miscommunication or just some sort of confusion here where instead of Jaylen staying attached to PJ Washington and having Trey track back, especially now that PJ has sunk into this play for some reason in order to just cloudy the spacing even more. They decide to play it with Jaylen tracking back to Terry and Trey taking PJ Washington. Bit of a strange matchup choice there. I would just prefer Jaylen stays and Trey be asked to track all the way back. But with this kick out coming this way, and Jaylen thinking he might be responsible for two guys here, and he's the closest man to Terry, and Terry is now one pass away. I get why Jaylen thinks that he should be the one to close out to Terry. It's tough. This is just tough. But again, I don't really blame anybody here as much as I blame the coaching staff for this. Why are we playing at the level against Gordon Hayward? I don't know, but tricky nonetheless. Jaylen eventually gets over, tries to rotate over, kind of loses track, doesn't get there in time. This one here, I think this might be the last clip. Jaylen Johnson fights around the screen, tags, gets around, ends up being a bucket for PJ Washington. Again, like this is not bad, I didn't think, from Johnson. You know, he stays touching, he's still touching, he reacts to the play immediately, gets there. And again, why are we at the level? Why are we at the level here? Why are we not dropping to try and cut off this and thus allow Jaylen Johnson to not be as deep in the lane thinking he has to tag Mark Williams here, because he does. I mean, Mark Williams is huge. If he's not here, if Jaylen Johnson is not here, I mean, this ball you damn well better believe is going to Mark Williams, and he is dunking the shit out of this ball. So I actually think this is fine from Jaylen Johnson. Not only that, but the closeout forces PJ Washington to drive into help. Again, like this is going to go in the books as Jaylen Johnson got scored on. You know, this is a long closeout. He gets PJ to drive into his help where he should, in theory, have DeAndre Hunter, should have Clint Capella here. He does have Clint. Clint makes himself available, and PJ just makes a floater. That's fine. But overall, you can see why I'm excited about Jaylen Johnson defensively, because I think he's done a lot really well, even in a possession where they score. You know, look, he stays attached here, right? Understands the screen's coming, gets over the top of the screen. Gets through, tags, he's available. Closes out, forces him into the help. He just makes a shot. And that's a shot that, you know, NBA teams are going to have to be comfortable with, because NBA guys are good at the end of the day. That's it for Jaylen Johnson. I wanted to kind of dive deep. I know that the last few clips were a bit of a bummer. The Hornets won this game. Sorry, guys. But you can see why Jaylen Johnson has improved. He's gotten better defensively than where he was. I think he's going to be like a real impact defender, maybe as soon as like later this year, but probably by next year or the year after. Like he's just really smart. He's moving, he's rotating, he's communicating, he's talking to his teammates. I seriously just like beg Atlanta, stop playing at the level of screens with Clint Capella. You're opening up way too much space on the court, forcing way too much difficulty for those backside defenders to be able to make plays. I personally don't love that. But you can also see on offense why Jaylen Johnson is so intriguing. He has a lot of skill as a passer. We saw some really fascinating, like underhand scoop passes. We saw some transition playmaking. He is very comfortable off of a live dribble making passing reads. That is an enormous, enormous benefit for him. Also, he covers ground in transition. He is a grab and go menace with how he can impact how quickly Atlanta is getting into its sets. That is something Quinn Snyder will love. He will absolutely love pushing the pace, having guys on a well-spaced court, get a chance to go out, spray to the corners, spray to the wings, while Jaylen Johnson grabs and goes and pushes the ball right into the teeth of the defense. Really, the swing skill for Jaylen is being not just a 35, 36, 37% three-point shooter, but a confident 35, 36, 37% three-point shooter who can not only make the ones that he takes, but take them with real confidence. The jump shot has improved drastically, as you saw from the clip I showed of him at Duke. He is so much more confident and ready and competent as a shooter. The base is so much better. He has more rhythm throughout the shot. It's a lot more consistent. I thought that the shot at Duke, I only showed you one, but in general, I thought the mechanics could be very inconsistent. The mechanics now look cleaner and much more consistent. There is real ceiling here with Jaylen Johnson. I think he has a chance. I don't know if I would like project all-star for Jaylen at this point, but he can be like a really, really high level two-way starter at some point. And given how little he played as a rookie, given how he just started to emerge into the rotation for Atlanta over the course of the back half of last season, given that when they acquired Sadiq Bey, it seemed like, God knows where his rotation spot might end up. I'm really glad to see Jaylen Johnson thrive. I'm really glad to see him in a place where he is showcasing what he's capable of, because again, this was like a 5-star top 5 recruit in his class who struggled at Duke, didn't get a great chance to show what he can do in his first season in Atlanta. But now that we're in his third season, he's really showcasing his ability and showcasing that he can be, if he ends up being a, 18 point, 8 rebound, 3 or 4 assists per game guy, that's an enormous win for the Atlanta Hawks. But the swing skill will be the 3-pointer in terms of how he impacts winning on a night to night basis. That's it for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. Please leave ratings, leave reviews. Let me know who you want to see next in the comments. I got a couple of requests for Zion. I got one for Jalen Green. I'm kind of waiting on Jalen at this point. I want to see him play well before I do something. I have a couple of requests for a couple of the rookies. I'm kind of waiting on the rookie class. Brandon Miller's a guy I got a request for. I might do Brandon a little bit sooner than some of the other rookies because it seems like Brandon has the sea legs under him a little bit better. But let me know who you want to see in the comments. That's it for this video. Thank you all for watching. See y'all next time.